A very good morning to all of you, ladies and gentlemen. It is my great pleasure, privilege, and honor to be with all of you here this morning. And I want to express my deepest and sincerest gratitude to Economic Times HR World for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts at this Future Skills virtual conference. The last 15 odd months have been very challenging times for all of us indeed. The very first time in the history of the world that we are being told, stay away from positive people. We've always been told stay away from negative people. For the very first time, we're being told stay away from positive people. For the very first time in the history of the world, people's hands have ended up consuming more alcohol in the last 15 months than their livers did in their entire lifetime. Sanitizers, indeed. During the lockdown, psychiatrists even had boards outside their clinics which said, if you're talking to the walls during this lockdown, it's absolutely normal. Come to us only if the walls start talking back to you. Now, jokes apart, times have indeed been uncertain and extremely turbulent. Some have grown, some have managed to survive, some are probably struggling hard even now. But it's not the first time that we are going through these challenging times. We live in a VUCA world, a world which is volatile, a world which is full of uncertainties, a world which is complex, a world which is ambiguous. And therefore, it's so important, imperative, and crucial for all of us as leaders to master the art of navigating through and steering our businesses, our lives through these turbulent waters. So I thought this morning I would share with you a couple of reflections on how to steer our business, our life through these difficult, challenging, trying times. Here's my first principle for this morning. I remember a couple of years ago, we were in Mauritius. I was there for an event, and then I also had some filming to do. I was with my team in Mauritius. And then on an off day, we decided to visit a park called Casela Park. Now, the speciality of the Casela Park was that it gave you an opportunity to walk alongside lions, along with them, with your hands on their backs, or even holding their tails in your hand. And they were not chained lions. Of course, they had their people there. And before we would go to walk with the lions, we would have to sign a declaration form, which said that if the lions pounce on you, it's your responsibility. Well, I signed the form. Our team was looking at me, kind of, do we have to do this? I said, if you guys don't want to come, I'm fine. I'm going ahead anyways. Finally, they did come on board. We all went there. It was fun. The video is up on YouTube. You could check it out. It was fun walking with the lions. What I did note while we were walking with the lions was very interesting. The lion would a lot of times turn his head behind and look behind. And I was wondering, what is the lion looking behind for? I remembered reading a Sanskrit term called Simhavalokanam. Simha meaning a lion, and Avalokanam meaning glance of a lion. And this term Simhavalokanam refers to turning behind, the lion's turning behind and looking at where it started from, where has it reached, what are the hurdles, what are the obstacles, what are the challenges it has overcome to reach where it is today. And similarly, it's so crucial for us as leaders to look back in the past and see where we were, where we are today. What is it that we have overcome to reach where we are today? And it's so important for us to celebrate that progress, to celebrate that success, to celebrate that achievement, that we have moved ahead in our journey. But as we celebrate, there's also a great need that we deliberate. Deliberate on what has been responsible in the past when we look behind. What are those things that we did right? What were those things that we did perfect that has that have been responsible to bring us the success that we have today? From the past, we look at what are the right things. What did we do right? How can we repeat them? How can we refine them? How can we build more upon them to achieve success even further? From the past, Simhavalokanam, we also look at what did we do wrong? Where did we fall short? What were our shortcomings? What were our weak points that probably held us back from reaching our aspirations, our dreams for growth? What was it that went wrong in a way that our strategies didn't bring the growth that we were aiming for? And you know what? This kind of thing, that looking at the past, Simhavalokanam, taking reviews during our annual meeting is a common thing. We repeat and refine what went right, and we also look at what went wrong and try to correct it. But we do it on a more uh, collective level. It's so important as leaders that we do it on a personal level as well and become vulnerable to own the mistakes we made. I often say to make a mistake is a part of our nature. To accept and own those mistakes is a part of an evolved culture. And to rectify and correct those mistakes is something that decides our bright future. Ladies and gentlemen, it's so important for leaders to be able to practice vulnerability. You know why? Because when we are vulnerable, we empower vulnerabilities amongst our colleagues, amongst our team members, amongst our employees, amongst our subordinates. We empower vulnerability where people are willing to own up their mistakes and thereby reduce the scope of those errors. Having said that, we did walk with the lions successfully with no casualties. The declaration form we signed was fine at the point of time. So, my first principle is this: Simhavalokanam, learning from the past. We can learn from books, we can learn from other people's experience, but there is no substitute to learning from our own experiences. Because when we learn from the past, repeat what went right, rectify what we went wrong, we are ready to empower our present. The lion was walking ahead while it looked at the past. At the back, Simhavalokanam was also in the present, adapting to what was happening around it. There were a lot of rocks and stones and thorns. The lion was pretty careful while it was walking through to the overgrowth in that jungle, in that forest. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to share with you a very, very interesting story. A man who was walking towards his village had to cross a massive river. The river was deep, the current was extremely strong. There was no boat around to ferry him across the river to the other side in order to reach his destination. On this bank, he saw some bamboos and some dried creepers. He tied it all up to make a huge raft. And using two bamboos, he ferried himself across the river to reach to the other bank. He felt, I made this raft, and probably I could keep this raft to use it for the future. I created it. I made it. It's valuable. It's my creation. He tied it on his back, like guys have backpacks. He had this massive raft made of bamboos as a backpack. And he started walking towards his destination. Now, as he was walking towards his village, he had to cross and walk through a dense forest. And the forest was so dense that in between any two given trees, there was only enough space for a human being to pass through. The raft would get stuck. He tried through several trees. The raft would get stuck. Now he had two choices: to keep the raft behind and walk through, or have the raft and sit there and not reach his destination. Guess what he did? Simple. He put the raft behind, knowing well that if there be a need, we'll create another raft, but moving ahead is extremely important. Ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about the present, it's extremely important for us to adapt to the change in the present, to innovate, to create newer patterns, newer systems. We have a new normal now. And in order to do so, sometimes the old patterns can act like that raft and stop us from going ahead, stop us from growing ahead as well. They can become the enemies of our growth. Therefore, often I say the 7 words that are the biggest enemies of our growth. We have always done it this way. We've always done it this way, but times have changed. And therefore, it needs for us to adapt to this new change. Every new change demands a new version of us. And which is precisely why we need to let go of those old rafts. If those old rafts, of those old things from the past are good, we repeat them, we refine them. But if they are hurdles, we should be willing to give up the good for the great. And therefore, my second principle for today is adapt to the change in the present, which means to let go of the good that served its purpose, but it's now acting as a hurdle so that we can achieve the great. And here's my last principle for this morning, ladies and gentlemen. In the year 2008, when Lehman Brothers crashed, we all are aware of what a massive global recession that was, a financial recession, and everybody was so badly hit. In the Midwest of America, there was a company called Barry Miller Limited. Overnight, they lost 30% of their standing orders, which meant a colossal loss for a small-sized, middle-sized company of 10 billion American dollars. Guess what then CEO Bob Chapman did? He called for a meeting of everybody. And he said, the first thing that I want to tell you all is we are a family. We've been through good times together. We'll also be through bad times together. No one is going to be laid off. We will all take an unpaid holiday of 8 weeks through the year. And based on our respective salary structure together, we'll save $10 million. Guess what? In troubled times, more than skill and strategy, what's needed is motivation and a high morale. The morale of everybody went up. And that year, when everybody was struggling, Barry Miller didn't just recover the $10 million of losses, but they also made a profit of $10 million. You know why? Because people gave their hearts, sweat, blood, and tears to execute the strategy of the company. You know why? Because they were cared for. Which is why somebody said a very beautiful thing. I do not care how much you know until I know how much you care. Ladies and gentlemen, as leaders, what we want is that our people execute our strategies with their hearts, not just their heads. What we want is they don't just give us our skills, but they give us a commitment. And if we want them to give their hearts to what we want them to achieve, we also need to lead from the heart. Leaders need to strategize with their heads, but lead from the heart with empathy, sensitivity, and care. Because when we lead with empathy, sensitivity, and care and create a sense of belonging, a family atmosphere, guess what? People don't work for a paycheck. People work for the organization. People don't cut corners. They give their blood, sweat, and tears to collectively have all of us together grow. Which is why Richard Branson, he said a very interesting thing. He said, train your people in skills, methodologies, train your people so well that they can leave you, seeking another opportunity. Train your people so well that they can leave you, but treat your people so well that they don't want to leave you. And which is why my third and last principle is when we're visualizing a bright future, it's very important for us when we lead through these uncertainties to lead from our heart with empathy, sensitivity, and care so that people don't just give us our heads, but their heart. From their heads, we get their skills, but from their hearts, we get their commitment. So to wrap up, there's 3 very important things that we should have as leaders as we steer our businesses through uncertain times now and in the future as well. Number 1, Simhavalokanam, looking into the past, repeating what went right, rectifying what went wrong, acknowledging the importance of vulnerability, and learning from our experiences. Number 2, adapting to the change in the present, where we are willing to give up the good for the great, leaving those rafts because they've served their purpose. And now we need to adapt to something new to be able to cross the forest of uncertainty. And last but not the least, when we visualize a bright future, we need to lead from the heart. Skills from the head, strategies from the head. We lead from the heart with empathy, care, and sensitivity, where we get commitment from our people to execute the vision that we have for the organization. I want to thank Economic Times once again for giving me this opportunity. Thank you all very much for your kind attention. Wish you all a great day ahead of learning in this Future Skills virtual conference, and wish you all the best in your businesses, professions, and in your personal life as well. Thank you very much.